Hello everybody, it's Larry and welcome to today's video. And as you know, we've all become a bit more Scottish. And at least that's what Ancestry would have people to believe with their new updates. Well, the question is it accurate? How accurate is it? And, you know, those are actually different questions. Is it accurate? To a degree. How accurate is it? Well, there's actually specific definitions of that in their white papers. So we're going to go over that. We did a video on this a year ago, and so in order to keep it different, we're going to make this a shorter version. If you want a detail about ethnicity, there's actually a video in channel that you can go and see, and it actually talks about specifically how accurate was the 2019 ethnicity. And so now that we have the 2020 ethnicity, and it says up here, it says new updates to your Ancestry ethnicity estimate. And some of you may say coming soon. I don't know if this is rolled out to everybody yet or not, but I think it's rolled out to most people. The way you get to it is you can go to DNA and you go to DNA story. So by clicking on DNA story, it's going to bring up your DNA estimate. So as you can see, we've got mine pulling up here. It says England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Norway, Sweden, Germanic Europe. This is what it shows for me. And these percentages are different now, and in specifically, England and Wales used to be combined. So you would have seen this as like 46% if it was the old way. And Scotland and Ireland has been separated because they've actually found, a way to separate those. And if you want to look at your old ethnicity report, up here under the words ethnicity estimate, it says you're viewing the latest update. To learn more about this update, there's a link. If you hover over that, there's a link. If you can click on that, and then below here it says view previous estimate. You can click on that and it brings up your previous estimate. It says 54-24. See how England and Wales is combined, Ireland and Scotland is combined. And there were a lot of regions that they've actually broken out. And by breaking out, that means two things. One, it's actually broken out by region, so it's a little more accurate in that sense. But two, that tells you that they were able to pinpoint that to shrink the regions, which means where it was maybe given a false positive in another area is giving you, a positive result in this area. It could still be a false positive, but the odds are getting much, much smaller. Now, at first glance, you look at England right here, and there's this little tip into France. We're going to click on that. And if you don't zoom in, you might miss this. You see how the dark yellow right here, and it covers the tip, but look at this shade of yellow, and shade, a little darker here. And then also over here to Switzerland, Liechtenstein area, and up into Scotland and into Wales. So they've refined it to say, okay, your ethnicity looks to be from this area, but it could still be in these areas. So that's important to note. You have to kind of zoom in on those. Even like right here, when we look at Norway, you see this is the the shaded area or the lighter area here, and then you start getting these darker shades. So this is the most probability is right here, and then this strip here, and a little bit right there is the next most, and then this strip here, Denmark and Iceland, becomes possible, but less likely. All right, so what were the changes specifically? Well, let's look at mine. I made a spreadsheet to make this easy to see. So if we come right here, this has the current ones, all right? You can see that in 2020, in order to make these the same, I added these two together. So England and Wales was together, so that's 30 and 16. That was 46. And Scotland and Ireland were together, so that would have been 41. So I added those together so that it would be the same for this. So the Ireland and Scotland actually went up 17 points. This went down 12 points, down 3 points, down 2, down 4. And this just kind of gives you an idea of the difference in the estimates. So that's the ethnicity update and what they've done to change. So I hear a lot of people go, well, how accurate is it? And it's totally changed my ancestry. Again, we want to look at a couple of these. So here we have Germanic Europe, and you can see right here it goes into Belgium. See how it covers into Switzerland? Even the higher shaded area goes into Switzerland, Liechtenstein. We clicked on, England, and look at that. The same areas right in here that were part of Germany are covered in here. So it could be, overlaying areas, and that's why it is so important that we see what's happened here, and that's that they've defined new regions. Because you did have England and Wales was combined, Scotland and Ireland was combined. They couldn't differentiate these. Now, not only can they differentiate them, but they can actually give you a probability. So for me, it's more the Highland area, and then the lowlands, and then for Ireland, if I click on it, it gives me a higher probability right here. It's pretty much all of Ireland, but you can see a little bit into Scotland and here. So because I have Scottish and Irish, see the overlap? Scotland overlapped a little bit, Ireland overlapped a little bit. It's really, and there is the term Scot-Irish, where a lot of Scots came into Ireland before they went to the United States. Now, interesting side story, the Scot-Irish, obviously Scotland to Ireland, but then they came to the areas of South Carolina and went to inhabit in the Appalachian Mountains. And the reason is it was very much like the highlands that they were used to, and the drinking water tastes the same. So it's kind of a unique and rare phenomena, and this has been confirmed by some Scottish YouTubers that they actually came there and they drank the water, and it out of the ground tastes like the water out of the ground there. It's very similar in taste. That you can't, as you travel around, all the waters have a different taste, but it was very much like home. The trees and the mountains look very much like home. They felt very comfortable there, and so that's where they ended up migrating to, which I thought was a real interesting story. So I have the white papers on it, but we're going to look at the DNA origins. So this is mine, which we were just looking at. All right, and you can see the numbers. And then we look over here, and this is for my wife. All right, so she's got England, Northwestern Europe, 49%, and I've got it at 30%. We got Scottish, 28%. She's got Scottish at 18%, Irish 15%, and Irish down here at 13%. Now, my daughter also took a test, and this is what's really unique about the DNA test. So we come here. Her Irish is 13%. Now remember, my wife, okay, hers was 15 and mine was 13. So it's not a pure division, okay? So let's say 15 plus 13, that's 28, and that would be 14. So it's not a pure division like that, but I give a certain percentage of my DNA, which binds with a certain percentage of my wife's DNA, and that forms, the offspring. So that DNA passed along. So the Irish passed along pretty equally because, 13 and 15, there's always that possibility of variance for a couple points. Germanic Europe, 2%. My wife doesn't have Germanic Europe, and my daughter has Germanic Europe, 2%. Obviously, she got that from my side of the family. Okay, so Sweden, 7%. Well, my wife has Sweden at 9. I've got Sweden at 4. 9 plus 4 is 13. You divide that by 2, it'd be 6.5. So, it says 7%, so it's right there. So it's kind of neat when you look at it that you're combining my ethnicity with my wife's ethnicity to get my daughter's ethnicity. Now, here's what's interesting. So you see my daughter has Indigenous America's North, and my wife doesn't show that. I don't show that. So why is that? Well, the truth of the matter is I have Native American ancestry, but it is a few generations back. My wife has Native American ancestry a few generations back. So we come in at under 1%. I come in on the DNA test, I tested at under 1%. My wife tested at under 1%. But when you added those together, and you divided it by 2 roughly, it became 1% for my daughter because my Native American DNA passed along probably all of my 0.7 or 8 or whatever it was. My wife's passed along her 0.7 or 8. I think it was like 0.7 is what I figured up. And so the same for my wife. Well, that became 1.4 for my daughter because she got that and it combined. So she actually shows up over 1%. What I also find interesting is in the old update, the regions, it had Native American that covered all of Canada and in Alaska, also covered Central America and South America. They've actually begun to differentiate the regions for the Native American ancestry, which I find to be very fascinating. I think it's kind of breakthrough, to be honest. I'd be really excited if this was indeed provable to be accurate. The Cherokee and Choctaw, mine Cherokee, my wife's Choctaw, and maybe that's why it didn't divide by two. I passed along, my 0.7 of Cherokee, she passed along the 0.7 of Choctaw, and it combined my 0.7 and her 0.7 instead of 1.4, instead of dividing it by two, maybe. I don't know. But my daughter shows up and actually does our Native American ancestry, albeit second great grandparent or third great grandparent, I can't remember off the top of my head, but although it's back there, it shows up to my daughter through the combination of me and my wife. Everything else is about like what you expect. We had Scotland 18, Scotland 28, so that'd be 30, 46. So we'd expect around 23-ish or something like that. Well, my daughter was only 18. Oh, excuse me, that was my wife's. We said we'd expect, 18, 28, 30, 46, 23. So my daughter ended up 31. So again, just like with the Native American, a lot of my Scottish DNA passed along, a lot of her Scottish DNA passed along, and it combined and my daughter got all of that. So she got more of the Scottish. So in fact, my wife being 18 and I'm 28 and my daughter's 31. Now, a lot of people, and I see this on some Facebook posts right now, and this is real important. People are like, neither one of me or my wife is that high, so it's impossible for the daughter or the son to be that high. I manage multiple kits, and this is obviously an error because there's no way that my child is more than either one of us. Well, yes, because it's a combination of the two of you. And so, you add that up and then there's some kind of division. Now, it will typically be from the half of the lowest value all the way up to, at some point, adding both of them in total. Okay? So that's really kind of the range that you could get in that. It could be, let's see, the lowest range here is my wife's at 18. So if I passed along none of my Scottish DNA and she passed along, 18 of hers, you would think, okay, 9% because it divided by 2. It could pass along none of hers. I mean, it could absolutely. I mean, that's the cool thing about the genetics. And people are like, well, yeah, it wasn't there. And then, suddenly this Native American showed up for my daughter. Well, that's right, because it may not show on the test, but when it combines up, it may show on a further test down the line. So she being American Indian, my wife's originally 2 years ago, it actually had her showing up Native American. So it did show up on my wife. It didn't show up on me except one time when they very first did it, and then I never saw it again. But by the time I started getting involved in the DNA and looking at it, and I never really was into this part, I think because shortly after I got my DNA test, I found a DNA surprise, so I was looking at other stuff. But my wife and her family would say, hey, what is this? What does this mean? So I'd look at it for them and say, okay, it's there. And so, we look around, and another important thing, let's go to my father-in-law. So we look at my father-in-law, and they've actually, yes, it's got his updated estimate. You'll get this message first time you go in. All right. See right here, it says Cameroon, Congo, and the Western Bantu peoples. They've actually localized the African DNA sets. There were just, I think, 4, and now there's like 14 or something. I'd have to get the actual counts. We'll see that later in the video. But it was really interesting because, this Cameroon, Congo, it didn't show up on my wife's DNA. But it wouldn't be surprising if it showed up in my daughter or son's DNA, because it can, my wife has this DNA. I mean, her ancestry is Cameroon, Congo, and Western Bantu people, but it's below the 0.5%, so it doesn't show. So I don't know if ancestry rounds up or rounds down or what that is. That's not really in their white paper that I could find, but it can pass along like that. And then you can see the England, Scotland, Ireland, and Germanic. And his is actually 5% Germanic Europe. And when you come over into my wife's, okay, none. So when my daughter has Germanic Europe, well, I had Germanic Europe, okay, and the father-in-law had Germanic Europe right here. So for my daughter to have it, my wife had that genetic, but it was under 1%. So maybe that, bonded with my, German ancestry. So whatever it is, she has the German ancestry, even though mom had none. And she also has the Native American, which it looks like neither one of us have it. We actually do. We have it documented in our trees. It's just that it's less than the 0.5, or it's exactly 0.5 and below. But my daughter got them combined. All right. So if we look in the white paper, we talked about the Cameroon, Congo. There are certain ones that have really high probabilities. So this is the Cameroon, Congo, and Western Bantu people. The precision and the recall. And what these are, recall can be thought of how much of the true ethnicity is called by the process. So recall is how much of it is true. So what are the likelihood that you got it right? Okay? And then the precision is how accurate was the percentage they gave you. So we come up here and, of course, the father-in-law, it's 1%. So what this is saying is there's a 98% chance that that is the correct ethnicity. And the value of 1% is 93% probable. Okay? So at 93% chance of 1%, that would still round to 1%. So you can pretty much depend on that. Other regions, much less. Now look at this one. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. Look at this precision. The recall of them assign it to you, like if they say that you have it, is 80% likelihood. But look at this. This is the only one I've ever seen like this. 100% that they got the percentage of it correct. If indeed that is the ethnicity, then they will be 100% correct on what they did. The highest is seen before, look right here. Barusho, 52% likelihood that if they say that you are this ethnicity, that you really are. But if you are, 99% chance that they got the percentage right. Okay? And you go to different ones. England, look at this. England and Northern Europe, 67% likelihood that that is your ethnicity. And 55% that they got the ethnicity amount correct. All right, so let's look at this one again, because I have that, my wife has that, and many of you will have that. England, Northwestern Europe, 49%. England, Northwestern Europe, 30%. So it's saying here that it's a 67% likelihood, if it says that I have England, Northwestern Europe, 67% likely this is my ethnicity. 33% chance that it's not. Well, then what would it be? Well, it could be Wales, it could be Scotland, it could be Irish, it could be Germanic, but especially since it has that overlay right here. See, right there in the Western Germany. And I know for a fact my ancestors are from right here in Twente, Germany. So it overlaps England. I don't know whether that DNA was attributed to England or whether it was attributed to Germanic Europe. I think Germanic Europe, but I don't know for sure. Now, another thing it does do is it does use your trees, which does affect the probabilities. So if in my tree I have everybody is from England, and it shows on their test that I could be England or Scotland or France or Germany or Spain, it's going to say, well, their tree shows up in England, their DNA matches as a possible England, so okay, it's possibly England. Now, sometimes you'll say you're from England, and it says, no, you're from Egypt, and it will say, no, your ethnicity is Egypt, and it'll just totally surprise you. So it takes a small factor of what your tree is. Your tree doesn't determine your ethnicity. Your DNA does, but by the same token, it does use some smart math to say, okay, their tree has this. Everybody who has this same, DNA strand, we think it's from, let's say, Egypt. Everybody else that has this test says that they're from Egypt, and his tree says they're from Egypt, so they're from Egypt. But if it says, hey, everybody that has taken this test says that they're from England, and my tree says I'm from Egypt, it's going to say, no, you're from England, because you've matched this entire seed group plus all the other people that have the exact same DNA. That's a good hint for you in your tree. You might be looking in the wrong way. So you can use ethnicity if you understand these probabilities. Now, after it says that, it says that it's 55% likelihood that it got the right percentage. Let's go back to my DNA test. All right, so I've got 30%. And let's say that I am 30%, okay? Or excuse me, I am from England. But this 30% could be off 50%. It could be 15, it could be 45. Well, then how good is that? Well, that 15% variance could be attributed to Scotland, to Wales, to Ireland, to Norway, to Sweden, to Germanic Europe, and to any one of these other areas. Okay, and then the same thing, we look for Scotland in the white paper and the other countries. There's Germanic Europe, 60% likelihood that it was Germanic Europe. And if it is, 81% on the accuracy. Okay, so it's saying that this is 61% accurate, and then this is, what do we say, 67%? Where is that? Yeah, 67%. And then Germanic Europe is 60%. And that's because there's a lot of overlay. There was a lot of travel in that. And the truth be told, from my research, the ethnicity estimates, they're really kind of timestamps, because you have these seed groups and you have people that, they go out to the areas and they find people that have lived in these areas for all their life. They have their families, and their families have never moved from this region. And they become, as part of the seed group. And with that information, you say, okay, then if you match that, then you're probably from this area. That's why it's not a solid percentage, because that's not a guarantee. That's a probability. This is all about probability. Okay? So let's look at the indigenous Americas, North. All right? So what's the likelihood my daughter really has Native American ancestry? Well, the probability that they got the right ethnicity, okay, let's go my daughters. The probability of indigenous Americas North, it says 1%. The likelihood that it really is indigenous Americas North is 99%. Not 100%, but 99%. That's pretty darn accurate. And then it says, if they said you were that, then the likelihood that they got the percentage right is 97%. So my daughter is 99% likely to be Native American ancestry, and 1% is 97% likely. Well, 0.97, even if it was off by 0.3, that would still make it 1%. So you can rest pretty soundly that this is a 1% Native American ancestry from her. And again, that does make sense, because we'll just come up here and we'll look at my trees. We'll come here, we'll look at the family tree. And for me, let's see, where is it? The father here, right here. Wilson Taylor is reported and documented to be full-blood Cherokee Indian. So that'd be 50%, 25%, 12%, 6%, 3%. So I would have expected maybe 3% to have come to me, but in the DNA divisions, I got not 3%, because that's a pure dividing by half. I actually got less than 1%. Actually, according to Ancestry, I got under 0.5. So I got 0.49 and below, and therefore it doesn't show up in my results. And then my wife's, on hers and her tree, let's see if I can remember which one. There's one of them that you can tell by the names, because there was some names that went specifically to those that married Native. There was kind of a slang term used back then, Mahala. All right, so Mahala was a very common term for Native Americans that married, and so that'd be 100, and then for there it was 50%, 25%, 12%, 6%, and like me, you would expect 3%. But in the division, this area actually is stronger in her DNA, and you can tell that when you start looking at your DNA matches and you look at their ethnicity reports. And let's just glance at that real quick. So if I go to the DNA matches and look at her test real quick. So this is Stacy, and we look at some of the matches. And I'm just going to go down a little bit and pick a cousin here. And so I know this cousin really well. We've talked a lot. We look at the shared matches. Oh, I want to look at the ethnicity. And so 46, 49. Look at this, Scottish, 45, 18. So I can tell which areas were stronger. My wife has 18% on the Scottish, but yet, her first cousin right here is actually on a 45%. And then over here, Irish 15 and 2, 9 and 3, 9 and 3. And right here, see the Cameroon, Congo, and Western Bantu people? So why this person's mother is the sister of my wife's father, she got the Cameroon, Congo, Western Bantu people passed along to her at a percent over 0.5, which is 1%, and then my wife didn't. Okay, so my wife shows up as 0 for that, but it's 1% here. But it comes out of the same line, okay, which was the Harold Kennedy that we showed before. All right, so on the ethnicity report, these numbers have changed. I'll put a link to the white paper, and if you need to do it, AncestryCDN.com, I guess the Canadian site. DNA, static, PDF, white papers, ethnicity 2020 _ white space paper.pdf. And again, I'll put the link down there. But these numbers and these percentages have changed slightly as they've refined it. They've also taken some of the areas and they've broken them apart. Well, what areas? Let me scroll to see if I can get the map for you. And we'll look at the regions. So here's the regions, and let's make this full page. It doesn't want to cooperate right now. There we go. All right, so as we scroll down just a little bit more, see how we've got England and Wales, and we've got Scotland and Ireland broken out. But when we looked at the previous white paper, see right here how England and Wales and even part of France were covered, and then Scotland and Ireland are all together. Over here we had the indigenous, the Native Americans. This was all from South America all the way up, okay? And then in Africa, here's Cameroon, Congo, and see there's very small overlays, so the percentage of likelihood is very strong in some of these. Some of these, like right here, look at that. This area and this area and this one overlap each other really strong. So if you were right in there, you could be in the yellow and the orange and the red. You could be in 3 different ones. So your probability of likelihood is a little bit less right there. And I believe, this was from Nigeria. It kind of goes into history, not to go into a lot of that, but in 1807, transatlantic slave trading was banned by the United States. All ships were intercepted and forced to return back to Africa. They would free anybody that was captive on those ships. They would return them to Freeport in Nigeria. And so why the slave castles might have been up here or down here or along the coast here or along the coast here, as the Portuguese and Spanish were bringing them into the Caribbean and bringing them into South and North America, because Spain used to own all of this territory except for the eastern seaboard. When that was happening, the United States, the 13 colonies, would intercept those ships here and return them back to Africa at Freeport. And so with that, you have a strong overlap of several different regions right in there. So for those that are doing African ancestry, maybe that will help. And I promise I will get that video out to you on African ancestry. I said that a year ago. It's not because I haven't researched a lot of it, because it's kind of a touchy subject when you get into the honest details of it. And so I want to be 100% accurate, and I also want to give you 100% information. Well, let's just put it this. This is how sensitive things have become. The My Heritage video that I did on how to colorize black and white photos was blacklisted by YouTube for about 4 months as racist and inappropriate for viewers and for advertisers, because it had the word black, white, and colored all in the same one. And because I've said them in this video may end up the same way. So obviously, if I did one on the African ancestry, it's gonna get me in trouble. But I am gonna do it. But I'm looking at maybe some point when we get to saying, hey, if the channel shuts down, it shuts down. If I put that video out, folks, grab it, download it, get copies to your friends as soon as possible, because there's a strong chance that YouTube will pull that thing down. Like I said, this one may end up getting in trouble. Come on. The MyHeritage photo optimizer got me in trouble. So I'll just leave that one for the way it is. So this is the way it was like in Africa. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 regions there. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 regions really. 17 if you count the peninsula plus Egypt. So you've got all these regions here now, and on the Native American, instead of this just being one, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 zones now instead of just one. And that's why, you see the video from Ancestry touting this as a big deal. This is a huge deal. I mean, this is enormous. And to be able to define it like this, I mean, look down in here. You've got 2 regions for all of this. And look at this. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8 in that area, where before you had just 2, maybe 3 if you count that. So that's incredible. And it's much more defined everywhere. And the fact that now Italy has a northern Italy and a southern Italy, where before it was all of Italy was covered in that red. Just being able to break it down like that. Look at Russia. You have it's just this one big orange and then the one big blue. And so you do still have the 2 big ones there. But look, you got the China broken out, the Mongolian area. You got so much. It's just so much better detail. So it is. It's a very, very big deal. And it is, accurate to the percentages of that we showed you before. So let's go back up. Apologize for the scroll. If I was smart, I would have noted the page number and then just gone right to it. You go to the white paper and go to here where it lists your ethnicities, whatever your ethnicities are. So like mine was England and Northwestern Europe there. And, it had Germanic Europe was in there. And my daughter's the indigenous North America. So when you look at these, there was Ireland. If it says that you're from Ireland, there's a 94% chance that that is your ethnicity. Now, it's 60% chance that the percent that they gave you is right. So you've got Irish, but it's, there's a 40% that it could be, maybe it should have gone to Scotland or Wales or England or one of those others in the region before they broke it out. So it's important to know these 2 numbers and not just take those numbers at face value. So since they made us all more Scottish, before you go out and buy a kilt, probably best to come in here. Now, Scotland, if they say you have Scottish heritage, then it's 80% chance that that's true. But just like Irish, 60% chance that the percentage is right. So there's basically a 1 in 3, chance on either one of those that it could be the other one. Some of that, you definitely have Irish, definitely have Scottish, but 30% of that should have been attributed to the other one. And won't be until they further refine those and they get those, off the top of each other. So let's look at Ireland again. So we zoom in to Scotland. See how it overlaps Ireland, and even the darker green right there overlaps. Okay, and then you've got Ireland. You click on it. I said Ireland last time, but see how it goes over into Scotland. So basically, this is your percentage. This part of Scotland will show up as Ireland, and you do it the opposite way. You have this portion of Ireland may show up in Scotland. And that's what those percentages are when you're looking at that. So when you look at that, 66% chance that the ethnicity is correct. All right. Anyway, I hope this made sense to you. If there need any clarifications, just ask the questions in the comments below. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and consider supporting it. I'm not going to put a QR code in this video because I want to get this video out because it's kind of timely and it just takes time editing. So I'm going to just put the link down there if you want to contribute and see more videos like this. Consider going down there and buying Starbucks coffee or some sodas or something to give me enough caffeine to keep me going on these things. To all of you who have already donated, thank you very much. I appreciate it more than I'll ever be able to tell you. It does mean a lot, so eventually maybe one day I'll have saved up enough and we can get some good editing equipment so it won't take me so long to render and I can get the good videos out in a timely manner. So subscribe if you haven't. Click the bell notification so you know when that next one comes up. And don't forget to check out the links below where we will have links to both the old white paper and the new white paper. Now, I don't know how long the other one will be up there. I recommend downloading that PDF so that you can have it. So in the future, you can look at it. And then don't forget that you can check your old ethnicity estimate quickly by just clicking this link that says learn about this update. Click on that. And right here it says view previous estimate. It'll bring up the previous estimate. It doesn't show the other one at the same time. That would have been nice. And right here it says click here to download as PDF. So you can click that and download it. I recommend that. When you click on it, it'll pop it up. You can click save file and click OK. And now you have a copy of your old ethnicity estimate. So in the future, when you get another one, you can compare several across and see how it's changing and really get an appreciation for what Ancestry's done in this area. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you again soon.